So good morning, Sangha, and good day. So greetings from the Bay Area, California, where I am. And I'm happy to see all the chat messages coming in and feeling a sense of a connection right here. Yeah, so welcome to our 7 a.m. Guided meditation and Dharmette. We will be starting our meditation. I'll offer just a couple of orienting words here. Yesterday, we started our meditation from this sense of grounding, and today we'll be expanding our meditation. If you like to stay with a sort of grounded feeling, this sitting like an inner mountain, feel free to do so. But we're also going to extend to include a kind of aliveness in this being. So think of this as kind of like a live mountain, if that image or that metaphor somehow works for you. And that includes paying attention to our life breath, the movements of the breath. And so that's the orientation we'll be working with. And we're expanding to explore the nature within this aliveness and enlivening aspect of our being. So we'll start with a sound of a bell. Pausing to begin. Arriving at where you are and how you are. Just as it is, not as what you wish it to be, or not demanding it to be otherwise. Gently, softly, feeling and sensing here and now. Maybe with the felt sense in the body, sound, temperature, whatever may be present in this moment. Mindfulness is at the foreground. And maybe heartfulness and bodyfulness are here too. Sensing this body sitting. Maybe the posture, movements of the breath. That's a general sense of the body without having to figure it out. Maybe you're feeling the weight of the body settling down naturally. Felt sense of earth element in the body. Like mud settling down in the water. It's natural. Feeling and sensing the earthy body resting on earth. Like stones in the riverbed. Or a sense of sitting like a mountain within. Quiet mountain. Still. Resting here if you like. Steady. Quiet. Collected. A steadiness of the inner mountain may naturally highlight the movements of the alive breath. Like the breeze in the mountain. Open to receive the felt sense of breath. There is an alive mountain within. feeling and sensing the movements of the breath. Maybe throughout the body, or just throughout the torso. As life breath enlivens the whole body. You may notice different dancing sensations in the body. Tingling, pulsing, vibrating. Maybe a kind of energetic humming. Swaying in the torso. Aliveness is being known. When we're receiving the felt sense of aliveness within directly, there may be an effect, a sense of being enlivened. By this conscious relationship with our own aliveness. You may stay with the movements of the breath, or just as a general sense of enlivening within this fathom-long body, a live mountain. A sense of awe or wonder may come in. Maybe sweet joy, happiness, by staying in touch with the movements of the breath. A sense of enlivening. Releasing ideas, beliefs, and conceptual overlays. Trusting your own felt sense. Allow the knowing to emerge from the immediacy of your own felt sense. Maybe there is no need for words. in this last few minutes of our meditation together, allow this aliveness flowing from the movements of the breath to nourish the whole body. Delight the whole body. Allow the flow of the breath to dance its own dance. So we'll make a transition to a little more words. And so this Dharmette this is a sequence of Dharmettes that we're building upon was from this sutta in Samyutta Nikaya. And yesterday I offered kind of an overarching description of what this sutta was about to unfold was about. And the sutta started out by saying that knowing and seeing the destruction of taints come with the development or come with cultivation, or can say practice, not otherwise. And then the Buddha offered 3 different similes to illustrate some of the characteristics of the cultivation. And so I wanted to unpack the first one, which has to do with a chicken and a bunch of her eggs. And so let me read this little piece right now. Suppose there was a chicken with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs, but she had not properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. That chicken might wish, "Oh, if only my chicks would break out of the eggshell with their claws and a beak and hatch safely." But they can't break out and hatch safely. Why is that? Because that chicken with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs has not properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. And so just like that, if the practitioners would not properly cultivate and wholeheartedly cultivate, develop what is needed, even if we wish all we wish, we won't be free. So just like the chick. And so I was struck by this little piece, this simile right here. There are two things that got highlighted, and that the word was, oh, the chicken had not properly sat on them. And the second word is to keep them warm and incubated. And so the first one I want to point out is that our cultivation and development is rather specific. And so this cultivation needs a proper cultivation and development. And in the Sutta, the Buddha offered that the specific cultivation and development is the 37 wings of awakening, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, 5 faculties, 5 spiritual faculties, 5 powers. And some of you would have known this. Those are all the things that we've actually spoken about in the 7 a.m. Dharmettes. 7 factors of awakening, Noble Eightfold Path. And so the development is quite specific, and we have to engage in them, and this other word, keep them warm and incubated, in that sense that we have to give ourselves over to commit to this cultivation and development. If the chicken wants the chicks to break through the shells, but she wanders around and socializes with other chickens, or go get her worms or something, and she sat for a few minutes and gets up, and that won't, the chicks won't break through. Right? And so in this way, for us too, when we cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path, our whole practice is oriented, is aligned with what Noble Eightfold Path is orienting us towards. And as I was reflecting that, and there's a lot of nuances in how chickens incubate and allow the chicks to be hatched. I don't know, somehow this kind of a life-making processes probably is never as trivial as what we think or what we see. And I had some birds incubating and hatching under my roof. I was kind of stunned by in the intricacy the mama bird was engaging in this whole process. There were times that she had to protect the eggs because the big bird would come, and there are times that she would be there and sit. So we don't know what might be going on within the chicken. But my sense is that she's attuned to this process. She's attuned to the chicks being incubated in some way. Yeah? And so for us, this development invites us to be attuned to our inner process. And then the simile goes on with another term here. And the Buddha also said, and I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit and then I'll read it. Basically said, well, even if you didn't wish to be free, but if you keep cultivating and developing the mind and heart properly and to keep developing it, even if you didn't have a wish to be free, it'll happen on its own, just like the chicks. And so let me read this part instead. When a mendicant or when a practitioner is committed to development, they may not wish. If only my mind was freed from the taints by not grasping, even so their mind is freed from taints by not grasping. Why is that? And you should say, it's because they are developed in the 37 factors of awakening. Suppose there was a chicken with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs, and she properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated, and that chicken may not wish, if only my chicks would break out of the eggshell with their claws and beak and hatch safely, but still they will break out and hatch safely. Why is that? Because that chicken with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. And so this, what's interesting or stood out for me were two things in this little teaching. One is that our practice or the cultivation development is not based on wishful thinking or based on our goals or the ideas of a goals or the results. It's not an orientation of resulting, because we can wish all we wish. And this, this goal orientation or the resulting orientation is kind of in the popular culture, right? And we're very driven by the goals oftentimes. And yet our practice is not goal-driven or result-orienting, and rather it invites us to cultivate and develop with wholeheartedness, sincerity, and aligned in a way that is conducive to freedom. And the other point that this particular simile really kind of highlights is that just like the chicks hatching, there is a natural process that is being born. The process of liberation is born within. So much of it is kind of under the surface level of our being. There is a natural unfolding. The chick can't just go ahead. The chicken can't just go ahead and break a shell for the chicks. And that the inner development has to unfold in its own time and it's in its own way. And the chicken plays a part in doing this. And as we can see, much of this happens below the surface level of our being. And so just like this, our Dharma practice we're participating in is kind of a process of developing and cultivating or nurturing kind of a womb-like environment for the goodness, the freedom, and knowing and seeing to grow and to mature. Sometimes I feel like the freedoms almost like coming out of the womb of my being, like, from the belly center of my being, and rather than coming from the head center. And this process, we can't rush it. And we can't rush it because we want it so badly. And if you hear that, it almost feels silly, or it doesn't make sense, because clearly that is not aligned with non-grasping, right? Because we wanted it so badly. And so instead, the invitation is that we learn to properly cultivate the inner capacities that kind of grow out of our inner womb, with the sincerity, with the care, with the patience, and a greater degrees of wisdom and love. And so thank you, everyone. And so that's the simile of the chicken and eggs. Thank you for your attention. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.